When Wayne Dyer talks about transitions, he's not just offering platitudes to help people get through tough times. He's hitting on something deeper, that we are more than our circumstances, more than our losses, and more than our bodies. What Wayne would say is that loss and death are part of the soul's curriculum. They're not the end. They're just chapters in an ongoing story. And that story is about your spirit's evolution. The real issue people face when dealing with loss is how they identify themselves. Are you tied to this fleeting physical world, or can you see beyond it? That's what Wayne means when he says we're not human beings having a spiritual experience. We're spiritual beings having a human experience. It's a shift in perception, and it changes everything. What's the core of this? Attachment. We cling to the physical. We cling to people, to jobs, to a version of ourselves. But what Wayne is saying, through stories and letters, is that clinging is what causes the suffering, not the loss itself. When you shift to understanding that the physical plane is temporary, you start to realize that nothing is ever truly lost. The energy, the love, the spirit of what was there still remains, just in a different form. And that's the key here. Wayne would ask, are you willing to let go of what's not real? Because when you do, you start to touch something deeper, the unchangeable part of you, the part that's connected to Source, to the divine. This isn't about turning away from your pain or grief, but recognizing that it's part of a bigger picture, a bigger journey. So when you experience loss, it's not about trying to get over it, but allowing it to guide you toward growth, transformation, and a deeper connection to your higher self. That's the real power of intention. It's not just about manifesting what you want, but aligning with the divine flow of life, especially in times of challenge. That's when you grow. That's when you shift. And that's where the real magic happens. Special thanks to our partners at Hay House for this exclusive video. And if you want even more great Hay House content, we've linked their YouTube channel down in the description below. Enjoy the video and believe.
Dr. Dyer, welcome. Hello.
Thank you, Summer.
Hey, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Great. So, tell me, please, this is a show for me. How do we let go of stress and fear and start living the way we want?
Well, I've talked about this on many occasions, this whole idea of stress being an illusion, because it's just not something that exists in the world. And and it's one of the things that people are always constantly blaming, something that doesn't exist, on why they're unhappy, and why their blood pressure is up, on why they're getting ulcers, on why they're unhappy in their relationships, on why they can't get things done at work, why they're always being forced to do things that they don't want to do, why there's so much pressure on them, and so on. And the big answer to all of it is always this great big word, stress, or anxiety, or whatever. And the fact is, as I've said, if you take a container and go out into the world with an assignment to bring home a box full of stress, you'll never find any. So what there is in the world, though, are lots and lots of people who are thinking stressful thoughts. And stressful thoughts are, I think the thing to understand about them is that, first of all, is that they originate with us. That you, whoever you are, you're the source of your stress. These are choices that we make to process an unpleasant event in a way that is going to, be invasive in our lives, or going to be painful in our lives, and so on. But most people, what they do is they blame the outside forces for making their life stressful, which, of course, makes for more and more stress. So what they're doing is waiting for the economy to improve, or waiting for their spouse to change his or her behavior, waiting for the kids to grow up, waiting for a new political party in Washington, or whatever it might be. And there's this constant belief out there that if only the world were different, if only things weren't the way they were, then I wouldn't have to be so unhappy right now. And it's basically the source of almost all of our problems in all of our relationships. Basically, what people are saying is, if only you, when they're upset, when they're angry, when they're full of stress about something, what they're really saying is, if only you were more like me, then I wouldn't have to be so unhappy right now, or I wouldn't have to be miserable, I wouldn't have to be feeling stressful. But people aren't going to be like you. The world isn't going to be the way you think it should be or ought to be. And what you want to learn to do is get into a different place. And when, of course, the kinds of things that you can do to make that happen, included in such things as meditation, getting quiet, getting peaceful, I've just returned from practically an around-the-world tour and had a lot of speaking engagements that I had to do. In addition to that, I had interviews to do and radio shows to do, and interviewers were sent to my hotel rooms in places like Dublin and London and all over the United States as well. And I can sit there and say to myself that, this is just a lot of stress on me, and why are the people always doing these kind of things? Or I can say to myself, I chose all of this. This is something that I opted for, and if I didn't want it to be here in my life, then I could do something about it. And if I want to change it, I still have that option as well. And I can have the option of just calling whoever it is and just saying I'm not able to do that, or it's too much, or whatever. And that little piece that Debbie Ford had on just before the show started, I think is really relevant. That whole willingness and ability to just say, no, this isn't something that I intend to take on. Thank you very much for offering me that opportunity. And you can do that very peacefully and very calmly. I have a chapter in The Power of Intention. It's chapter 11. And I think it's really very, very, very helpful to those of you listening if this is an area of concern in your life. It's called, "It is my intention to live a stress-free, tranquil life." And the fact is that when we have anxiety and when we have stress in our life, basically we've removed ourselves from our source. We've removed ourselves from God, because we come from a peaceful, loving, kind source. We come into this world and we take on these ideas that we have to do certain things, and other people's opinions are more important than our own, and we can't say no when people ask us to do things. And this is just a whole bunch of beliefs. And what is a belief? It's just a thought that you keep thinking over and over and over and over again until ultimately it becomes something that you think of as a truth. But it's not necessarily a truth. Many times those thoughts just don't have any basis in truth at all. Like, people won't respect me if I say no, or people will be unhappy with me if I say no. But the fact is that people respect you more when you say no than when you just automatically go ahead and do something that you don't want to do. So what I have done when I got back from this trip, and I always say that if I can get a picture of myself returning back to Maui and returning back to this place that I love so much, and being out on the beach and doing my running and practicing and tennis and all of these kind of things, that if I can get that picture in my mind, then what I'm going through at the time is much easier for me to enjoy it. So rather than sitting around, people say, well, you're 6-hour difference in time zones, you're 11-hour time zones off, and I say, I don't do jet lag. I just don't, because jet lag is just a thought that you think over and over again until it becomes a belief that you have to be stressful when you change time zones. So when I change time zones, I just remind myself what my friend Ram Dass said, just be here now, be here in this moment. So I'm now in England, or I'm in Ireland, or I've changed time zones. This is where I am, and I don't allow myself to think a thought that is going to interfere with that. Then I get on an airplane, and instead of getting on an airplane and saying, oh, my God, all of these flights, and I've got to go through security, and I've got to go do all of this, I just change my mind about all of that and just decide that this is going to be a pleasant, lovely, nice, kind, fun experience. And to remind myself to not take myself so seriously. And in the Power of Intention, we call this rule number 6, which is don't take yourself so seriously about everything. Another thing that I remind myself of over and over again, and I just got this from a wonderful book written by Susan Monk Kidd back in the early 1990s called When the Heart Waits. She also wrote the Secret Life of Bees, which is a big popular book now. But in this book, When the Heart Waits, she speaks about the value of waiting, and talks a lot about how impatient we all are in our lives. We go to the drugstore, and there's one person ahead of us to get our prescription, and we think that we shouldn't be able to slow down, and that we should be there first. And we get in the highway, and somebody drives a little bit slow, and we want to get around them right away. You go to the post office, there's 5 people in front of you, and somehow this idea of just waiting, and every one of you who are mothers know that if you're going to have a baby, there's a waiting period. There's a 9-month period in which you just have to go through and let nature reveal its secrets by and by. And almost as if we've bypassed that whole automatic notion about ourselves that waiting and just being at peace and meditating and getting quiet are bad things, and that we should try to avoid them as much as possible and get to the front and get it fast. And the faster we do it, the better. You can see I even talk faster when I speak about it. So when I got back from this trip and all of that, I practiced that the whole time, and it was the best trip I've ever had in terms of my health. I didn't have any difficulty with, sometimes I get bronchial kinds of things. I changed my whole approach to the whole thing. I got back, and I decided I'm going to take up yoga. So I'm doing Bikram yoga. This is my third day in a row. And going in there and sweating and doing all of these things and trying to stand on one leg and move my other leg behind it and sit down and stretch my leg out to the... I can't do about 70% of what those other people are doing, but nevertheless, I'm there and I'm doing it, and I find that just doing 90 minutes of yoga every day is one of the most peaceful things, and all the things that stressed me out about so many things just aren't even a part of my life any longer. So those are some of my suggestions, and maybe we'll take some calls about them.
Wonderful. The best thing I heard in there is that stress is entirely self-created.
Exactly. There's none in the universe whatsoever, even a hurricane and all of that. It's like it's our reaction to it that causes us to have problems, and we always have a choice in what we think and how we process things.
Absolutely. Dr. Dyer, what do you say we go to Amita, I believe, or I'm probably mispronouncing that. Amita, she's in London, and she's been waiting on the line for you.
Hi there.
Amita, welcome to the show.
Hi, Dr. Dyer.
Hi there. How are you?
I'm very well. You are my guru. You are my mentor.
Oh, well, thank you.
I met you in London a couple of weeks ago, and it's a real honor to be able to speak to you.
Thank you. I love your city. You know what I discovered?
Can't wait to have you back.
You know what a cab driver told me?
Yeah.
He said in 1890, when they had horse and buggies to take people across the town, that you could actually go from one end of London to the other faster by horse carriage than you can today in a cab. So
I believe he's absolutely right.
So many cars.
But so no stress. But there's no stress with that. Amita, what's your question for Dr. Dyer today?
My question today is, I've read a lot of your stuff. I've heard so many of your audio tapes, and basically you're in the car, you're in the gym, you're everywhere I go. You're all I listen to.
Oh, well, thank you.
And I tried very hard to practice everything that you teach. But there's just this one thing that I can't seem to get over, and that is there's a person that I suppose I could say that I have a fear of in my life. And wherever she turns up or every time she phones, it's almost like fear grips me, and I think about the past and I think about things that she's done, and I just can't seem to get over that stage.
Is this a relative?
And, it's a relative of my husband's.
Relative of your husband's.
Mm.
And are you forced to see this person on a regular basis?
Well, it's his sister.
So it's your sister-in-law.
It's my sister-in-law, and we do get on sometimes, but beneath all of that, I suppose.
What kinds of things did she do that? I mean, just very quickly, that you are still hanging on to that were so troublesome or difficult for you in the past?
It's accumulated over 15 years, so there's a lot to go over.
Yeah, but what is it? Is it all verbal, or I mean, did she ever?
It's all verbal, and things like it stems from jealousy on her part, and things have been said, and.
Here's what I recommend you do. There's that you take out something and you laminate this. And you carry it around with you, literally laminate. You know what I mean when I say laminate?
Yes.
Okay, so you take it to one of those printer places, and you get it typed up beautifully. And I want you to write these words right out on this little card. I want you to carry it with you wherever you go for like the next 6 months for a year. And on there, I just want you to write the words, "What you think of me is none of my business." And just keep reminding yourself every day, just read that particular thought. Whenever the thought of your sister-in-law comes up, whenever her presence comes up, whatever it is what you think of me is none of my business. In other words, you are taking your power back. What you've done is you've given your power away. And by giving your power away, what you've done is you've said that what you think of me is agonizing for me, is upsetting to me, is stressful to me, is painful to me, is any number of these things. And the fact of it is that whatever she thinks of you, and I always say that, let's say that instead of her thinking and having said all of these terrible things over the last 15 years, what if she came to you one day and said, I used this example before, what if she said, last week you were this, but today you're a car, you're an automobile, and I want to put you down on all fours, and I'm going to put a funnel in your ear, and I'm going to pour gasoline into your, would you be a car if she thought you were a car? Would you be a giraffe if she thought you were a giraffe? And, of course, your answer to that is, of course not. I'm what I am. And the fact is that you are what you are, and what she thinks of you is just, it's her problem. It's something for her to deal with. And it isn't even worth you giving 5 more minutes of your energy to. And as soon as you get that, as soon as you understand that, you'll see her as somebody who has the same kinds of concerns as you do. She came from the same place as you do. You share the same God that she shares. We all come from the same place, and she doesn't know how to be anything other than what she is. And now what will happen is you'll start just surrounding her with kindness and with love and with joy in your heart and forgiveness. And you'll be at peace because you're not making her opinions of you more important than your own opinions of yourself. And that's my advice. That's the best I can do.
What do you say, Amita?
Thank you.
Good?
Thank you. I will definitely go to the shop tomorrow.
Do it.
And I'll get that laminated.
And every time you then look at that little line, and it's a great line, what you think of me is none of my business. That's just not my business. My business is, making somebody else's opinion of you more important than your own opinion of yourself is the cause of your suffering. And as soon as you change that around and make your own opinion of you the most important thing, then you'll actually be able to love her, which will be freeing to you. It'll actually free you up.
Yeah.
All right, Amita.
I have actually tried to do this as well. Mm-hmm. But I feel that I keep going backtrack.
Because it's a habit, and it's just a habitual way of thinking over and over again. You believe that because somebody said nasty things about you, that your responsibility is to think those nasty things back and be upset and be hurt and so on. But again, think about our great spiritual masters. Think of Jesus. It's like, and when someone would say something bad, there's a story. I don't know if I have time. There's a story real quickly of. I think I've told it before on the air, but of the Buddha who had people follow him around who were always criticizing him, always finding fault with him, always saying terrible things about him, and always he would respond with love, and always he would respond with kindness. And finally, the devotees, they couldn't take it anymore. They said, "How could you be so kind in the face of all of this negative stuff that just keeps coming at you?" And what his response was, he said, "When someone offers you a gift, and you do not accept that gift, to whom does the gift belong?" And what he was really saying is, if someone offers you a gift of their anger or their bitterness or whatever, and you don't accept it, then who owns it? You don't own it. So why would you be upset with something that somebody else owns? And that's what you're doing. You're being upset with something that your sister-in-law owns instead of being happy with what you own.
Wow. Thank you.
Thank you, sweetheart. God bless you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so
very
much. Appreciate your call. Well, Dr. Dyer, we have just enough time to get Randy on the line from Tahoe, Nevada, and bring the question out, Randy, and then Dr. Dyer will answer it when we get back from the break. So welcome to the show.
Oh, it's Brandy.
Oh, Brandy, welcome.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have been practicing the power of intention, power of focus and belief, and creating your life by that. And I keep getting roadblocks that when it seems like everything's flowing and it's happening, and I feel like, wow, it's, I'm really on track, it's flowing, then all of a sudden I get these big roadblocks where there's nothing I can do to make it continue to go forward, and it just ends.
You've got to give me an example. What do you mean, real quickly?
It's happened in all areas of my life. It's happened in relationship. It's happened in a business opportunity.
But what would be an obstacle that you just can't overcome? What would that be? I'm trying to think of what that might be.
Well, like for instance, with the business partnership, everything was flowing, and then all of a sudden we were kind of getting into contract negotiations, and then there was just all of a sudden miscommunication that seemed to be happening that made
Hold it right there,
okay.
Brandy. So you get into these business kind of things, and these obstacles present, miscommunications occur, and you think that means what to you when that happens? That what you want to create isn't happening?
Yeah, I'm getting now discouraged that all this stuff that I've been studying and trying to live my life by doesn't really work because it's not been working for me. In the past 3 years, I've had 3 years of this happening consistently. You know, it just kind of, everything just seems to blow up right after it's flowing, and then it just stops and it blows up.
Does it ever occur to you that you are attracting exactly what it is that you were putting out there, that this is not the universe doing that this is you doing that? I mean, I'm not like asking you to blame. I'm just saying it's what keeps showing up in your life. So the independent variable here is you. It keeps showing up. You keep maybe anticipating it, expecting it, not believing you're worthy of it, thinking that this is the way things always are going to go for you, whatever it might be, and there's almost like an anticipation that when we're going to get close to the edge, but we're never going to be able to jump in and really make this happen.
Well, I'm only getting to that point right now after my third year in the final straw.
Yeah, but I mean, as these things have happened in the past, have you processed them in such a way that you say, I needed to go through that? Like when you go through a divorce, or when you go through a bankruptcy, or when you lose a job, or when there's an accident or whatever, most people start, telling themselves, this is awful, this shouldn't have happened, but if you're at the place that I'm speaking to you from the power of intention, you would be saying to yourself, of course, this is what I needed to go through, that there's no mistakes in the universe, that my plan doesn't work, God's plan does, I'm going to listen to that one. I'm not going to judge it, I'm not going to tell myself that it should be something different. And it's like, and then you begin to attract an energy that says there's no obstacle that could possibly show up as this thing unfolds that could prevent the best outcome for me. There's nothing that could prevent the best outcome for me. I may not know what that best outcome is, but and it's on its way, and I expect it to continue. And it's like, and you create that kind of a mindset. And all I can say to you, Brandy, is that it works for me. I just don't anticipate things not working out. And I have some things, even right now in my own life, that haven't worked out exactly the way that I wanted them to work out. And I know that there's a greater plan at work here. And it's like I get to a place where I just suspend that, and I get into that thing that I was talking about at the beginning of the show, where I allow myself to be in a state of waiting and in a state of anticipation and a state of joy, of not trying to push the river and not trying to make something bigger happen, and not tell myself that something terrible has happened in the way of an obstacle. Then the obstacles disappear, and then you get past that, and you realize, so this is why. This is exactly why. I mean, 5 years ago, I was in just a miserable state in a relationship and what's going on and so on, and I thought perhaps that I could never be happy again. And today I'm deliriously happy, and I look back on what happened 5 years ago, and I understand exactly what was going on and why it had to go on, and I'm in a better relationship with everybody, including the person from 5 years ago and now and everything. And at the time, I just wasn't able to see the bigger picture, and that's what I'm asking you to look at. Look at the bigger picture. Don't give up. The source that created you is what's behind all of this. Be completely at peace with that, and whatever you want or looking for, anticipate that it's coming rather than that something's going to blow it up. That's my advice.
Oh, I hope that something does happen.
What about this relationship thing? What happens that you said something of relationship?
Well, I felt like I met that right person, and that we were brought together at the right time in the right place, and then all of a sudden the relationship seemed to change. He seemed to change, and it turned into this wonderful, beautiful relationship to a verbally abusive one that I just could not, have in my life.
Yeah, and you can't see the greatness in that and the joy in that and what you were taught there and so on. I mean,
I can't see the greatness of why, each relationship seems to, you think it's right, and it just seems to not be.
Yeah, except that when you are in what you think is a beautiful relationship, and then it turns out that somebody becomes verbally abusive, it's like it teaches you so much about entering into those kind of relationships in the future, meaning attracting those kinds of people. And before long, you won't even be those kind of people. You won't even allow them to show up in your life. It's like as soon as that's the first little hint of verbal abuse that just starts to show up, the first little hint of disrespect or physical abuse or any of it, the first little hint of it, you are so now in touch with who you are and what you anticipate and what you are worthy of and what you're going to have in your life, and you have such a strong knowing about that you just very gently just move on and say, well, thank you, God. Thank you for letting me see this here right now in this moment, and off you go. And you don't have to go through this long period of suffering that you go through now. It's all part of a great learning process, and the right person's on its way. You just have to open up a door and allow that person in. We've got to move on.
Okay. Yes,
okay, thanks,
Randy, it's time for us to go. But thank you so much for your call. That was a lot of good information in there about a couple different situations for her. What do you say we have Natalie on the line from Montreal, Canada? And she's got a question for you, too, as well.
Hi, Natalie.
Hi, Dr. Dyer.
How are you, my dear?
I'm fine, and how are you?
How are things in Montreal?
In Montreal, they're going fine.
Good.
Yeah, beautiful weather.
That's great.
So, the reason I'm calling is I'm having a lot of problems because of stress in my life. My father was sick over the summer. The operation went very well, but ever since then, his mental aspect has really degraded. He's practically driving us up the walls, my mother and myself. And we don't know how to deal with him anymore because he gets upset if it's too cold in the house and he wants to put up the heat. He'll even call the police. He's done all kinds of things that we really do not know what to do anymore.
Is it a dementia? Has he got a form of dementia of some kind? Is he?
We don't know because now they're talking about maybe getting psychiatric evaluation done because last night he called the police. So my mother has a resource person that she can talk to, a social worker. And when she called her today, she goes, I say we're going to get him evaluated and all that because he's really draining her.
Yeah,
and
when someone gets to that point, how old is he?
He's 76. Mm-hmm. And the worst part is that he's the one who has basically given up because his operation went very well. He has no reason. The doctors say, no, everything's fine. You shouldn't have all these problems that you say you're having.
It's hard to get inside of his head and understand what's going on from his perspective. I mean, especially after having had surgery. That's a very traumatic thing, and it may be something he may believe that something has been rearranged inside of him that is making him this way, even if there's absolutely no reason for it whatsoever. At any rate, we can't get inside of his head and change it, but we can certainly look at what your options are, and in addition to getting the evaluation and so on, I would really very strongly recommend that you go within yourself and make an absolute conscious decision that you are not going to allow yourself to be emotionally manipulated by the behavior of this man.
Because that is what he is doing. He is really emotionally manipulating us.
Yeah, absolutely. So you just make up your mind that's not going to happen. So when he starts behaving in these irrational ways and starts making these accusations, you let him know, just like you would do with a child that's having a temper tantrum, that this is not behavior that you're going to tolerate. You do it with love, you do it kindness, and you leave the room. You walk out. You say, and each time you condition yourself with this person that every time he behaves in these ways, what he's going to be doing is sending you away, and then you leave, and then you come back. And eventually, he will get it, that this kind of behavior is not something that is going to keep you around and make you unhappy and make you miserable and manipulate you. He'll get that this is behavior that's sending him away. That's the beginning. And you do this all up and down. You just surround him with love, as much possible love as you can. Surround him with forgiveness, and make your own conscious decision about what you're going to be.
We've got William on the line. He also has a question for you, and I believe it may be about communication, just like we're talking about. William, welcome to the program.
Hey, William.
How you doing, Dr. Dyer?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Where are you calling from?
Ogden, Utah.
Oh, great.
That's in the Rocky Mountains.
Yeah, beautiful place. I've been up there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a question for you, if I could.
Sure.
Well, I've retired as a psychotherapist, and I teach at a local university, and I read your book, The Power of Intention, and that's a remarkable piece of literature.
Thank you very much.
I followed your career also and watched you grow and become the kind of human being you are. And one of the things I'm struggling to do is twofold. Number one, start doing some seminars to help individuals and couples with their relationships. And then secondly, to write a book about a concept that hit me a while back when I was teaching a domestic violence class. My question is, how did you get started? And if you could give me some ideas that might circumvent some unnecessary suffering, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a hard one though, because nobody can, everybody has to sort of follow their own path. I took a very unusual path when I got started. I've always been extremely, excessively, probably obsessively committed to what it is that I'm going to create, and I've never let any obstacles ever come. That's why I always have a difficulty with people calling me up and telling me about all the obstacles that show up in their life, because to me they were always just more indications of what I hadn't been willing to do yet. Because I don't ever believe it's not what you're willing to do, it's what's on your list of what you're unwilling to do, and that has to be a list that has nothing on it. And so for me, it was when I wrote my very first book, which was a counseling textbook, group counseling for personal mastery. I sent the entire manuscript out. I made 100 copies of it on a Xerox machine and sent it out to 100 different publishers, and I got 99 rejections, and I got one little place. It was called Educational Technology Publications in Englewood Cliffs, California, and they said yes, they would like to publish it, and so that was my very first publication. And when I wrote Your Erroneous Sounds, about 6 years later, I went in and talked to different publishers in New York, and I bought up the first 3 printings myself, because they didn't have any plans for it to go beyond just the first printing, and so I bought them up and I stored them in my ex-wife's garage. And circulated them myself and took them in a van and went across the country, and I literally spent 2 years on the road going from city to city. Did you ever see Coal Miner's Daughter?
I did.
Wasn't that a wonderful, I mean, that whole, and that was reminded me so much of what I was doing, going from little radio station to little radio station and delivering the books myself and going to the bookstores and having the time of my life, literally. It was a very joyful experience, and I never asked anybody else to write anything or to do any endorsements or anything like that. I just totally threw myself into it. It's what in Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill talks about having a burning desire, which is different than a regular desire. A burning desire is one that won't go out. It's inside you, and you just absolutely know, so that everything that you attempt to do, if it doesn't seem to be working out the way you want it, you just cross that off the list and say, it's like that old line from Thomas Edison when he was trying 25,000 different ways to invent a light bulb, and he still didn't have it. And here was the most famous inventor in the world, and they asked him the question, how does it feel to have failed 25,000 times? And his response was classic. He said, failed? He said, today I know 25,000 ways not to make a light bulb,
exactly.
Not to make a battery. And I just kept learning what not to do. And so I never think of obstacles as things that are bad. I always think of them, okay, one more thing to cross off the list. That one's not going to work, And the other thing is, I started out doing it in very small places, like up in Port Washington, New York, at the Educational Assistance Center. I gave a lecture every Monday night. I was a professor also at St. John's University in New York, and Monday nights were free for me. So I just offered a course, and like 12 people showed up the first time. Then we did it for 4 weeks, and I think they paid $5. After the 4 weeks were up, they told a bunch of people about it. They wanted to continue the course. We had about 30 people show up. And the conclusion of all of that is 3 years later in Port Washington, New York, on Monday night at Schreiber High School, we had 1,200 people, each who were paying $20 for a 4-week seminar to come and listen. And it became like an institution there in the town. And then it went from there to bigger cities, in Manhattan and then all across the world. But it's like you start out and you give a talk. If 3 people show up in a phone booth, give your first seminar there. Don't have anything on your unwilling list. That's my best advice.
Hey, thank you so much.
Thank you, my friend.
Continued success for you.
Thank you, and God bless you. You live up there in a beautiful, beautiful part of the world.
Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, William. We have Matt now on the line. He's calling from Arizona. Matt, welcome to the program.
Yeah, hi.
Hi, Matt.
Hey.
How you doing?
And what is your question for Dr. Dyer today?
I've identified my ego, and I actually have conversations with it frequently.
Good.
But it constantly wants to be in charge, and it sometimes lets me function. I've learned that the best way is to stay on top of my ego is to watch it, but it doesn't like this. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, and in fact, it's frantically always trying to, distract me, from doing this.
Right.
You, Ram Dass, and others have advocated actually the death of the ego in order to remove that control.
Right.
But I have this sense that the ego does actually play an important role.
Yeah, I used to think that too. I'm not sure about that. I've sort of changed my mind on that, because the thing about the ego, the most important thing to remember about the ego is that it's an illusion. It's really the false self. I mean, that's what all of the great spiritual masters, or that's what Patanjali was teaching like 4,000 years ago. It's the false self. The real self, is this, that Lao Tzu said, that is real which never changes. So the part of you the only part of you that's real is the part that's eternal. And everything else is an illusion, including all of those beliefs that you have about, what your ego is, and all of it's like you're really slaying something that doesn't exist in the first place. If you just recognize that, then you'll be much more at peace with it. But we're going off the air here. I can tell that in about 30 seconds. So.
Sure. Okay. Well,
Sorry,
thank you very
Matt.
much.
We'll have to wrap that
Matt.
up.
Great questions, and maybe I'll meet with you. We can all get together on Maui over here. It'd be great.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Sounds great. God bless you.
Appreciate your call, Matt. That's a great idea for a show. How about a whole show about the ego and tackling that?
Anytime. You
that
tell me,
monster.
Summer. You're in charge. Bring your FX47 with you, and we'll do it.
All right. Well, Dr. Dyer, thank you as always for being with us today. We look forward to having you on air again next Monday, same time, same place.
I'll be here.
To watch another amazing Wayne Dyer video, check it out right there next to me. I think you'll love it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
There's 9 principles in this book. I call this when you can't kiss your own ear. And people ask me, what does that mean? I said, well, in order to get your ear kissed, somebody else obviously has to do it. Otherwise, your ear is going to go through a whole lifetime without being kissed.